And also
Thank you
Dr.
very
Vera.
much,
God bless
Pastor
you.
Daniel.
谢谢 Daniel 牧师，
And shalom, everyone.
平安每一位。
As we are coming towards the end of the Golden Gate gatherings,
当我们逐渐接近了这个金门特会的尾声，
two things are happening.
两件事将会相继的发生。
As our dear sister Saoyan said, we are beginning to receive a lot more.
Just like 我们的姐妹说，我们要开始领受，会领受更多。
And we are beginning to see things clearer.
我们开始看见这件事情越来越清晰了。
So today I would like to share a topic that I believe would be a blessing to you.
今天我要分享的主题，我相信会对你带来一个祝福。
And it comes out from the heart of Revelation, the book of Revelation.
这是从启示录里面出来的一个非常重要的中心信息。
And today I did something different. I decided to give my lesson a topic.
今天我要做一点不同的，就是今天把我要分享的给了一个主题。
The topic being beginning with the end in mind.
那我的主题是什么呢？要把末后的日子最后面的放在心里来开始来思想，也就是把最后的放在最前面来思想。
I'd like for you to imagine being like John in the book of Revelation.
我们想一想，就像老约翰在启示录里面，
Here was John, a very elderly man in Patmos, and then all of a sudden he was taken into the heavens.
想想看，老约翰那个时候已经很老了，在拔摩海岛，但是突然之间，他被神的灵踢起来到天上。
And from Revelation 4 all the way to Revelation 22, he's seeing things after things after things in heaven.
所以从启示录第4章到第22章，他不断的在灵里面看见天上的事情，一幕接着一幕。
And then finally, he comes back to Patmos, the island.
那最后终于他就回来到这个拔摩海岛了，好像灵就下来回来到拔摩海岛。
What would be his first sermon?
那么他回来以后，他第一个宣讲的信息是什么？
Now that he has seen the future and he's coming back to the present, what would be his first sermon?
现在他看尽了以后未来所有要发生的事情，那么他回到现在，他第一个要讲述的宣讲的信息是什么呢？
So I want you to imagine you being in that place, and I want to bring you in a small way to that reality.
所以你想想看，你就像老约翰，如果是这样的话，我把你要带入这种一个小的部分，从你知道最后以后，现在你回来，你要怎么讲呢？你要怎么想
Therefore,
呢？
the title beginning with the end in mind.
所以我的主题是要开始什么开始？要把你知道最后的这些放在心里来开始。
Allow me to read a passage of scripture from 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 9.
让我们来读一段经文，《哥林多前书》2章9节，
where it says, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him."
第9节，如经上所记，神为爱他的人所预备的是眼睛未曾看见，耳朵未曾听见，心里也未曾想到的。
When we read a verse like this in 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 9,
当我们读一个经文像这样，《哥林多前书》2章9节的时候，
there is nothing for us to imagine except that we see what God is promising us.
那其实我们没有什么好看的，除了神给我们的应许之外，我们要看什么呢？
But after reading what John has seen and John has written, you and I get a lot of ideas about what the future is going to be like.
但是当我们了解老约翰所写的启示录以后，我们的想法不一样，我们有很多知道的，我们有很多在灵里看见、听见的了。那现在我们不一样了。
Most of the Christians alive today, when you ask them, describe the future that Christ has made possible for you, most of them will struggle to answer that question.
如果你现在问基督徒说：“来形容一下耶稣基督为你这个预备的应许的未来，你要怎么说？”大部分的基督徒都说不太出来。
For most Christians, their story ends with the rapture.
我们通常都只会说到故事的终结就是被提。
So what happens after the rapture is something that is blur for them.
所以大部分基督徒呢，在这个耶稣来要把我们被提之后，我们都模模糊糊说不出所以然来。
For most Christians in their mind, after they are raptured, they get to be with Jesus and they will live with Jesus forever up there in heaven. That's how the story ends.
所以大部分的基督徒怎么样讲的故事，就是当耶稣再来，我们被提要这个到空中与主相见，从此以后我们就跟神永远快乐的生活在一起。大概这就是我们能够告诉大家的故事终结。
After you read the book of Revelation, you get a very different view of reality.
但是当你读了启示录，你就知道事实上并不是这样，是很不同的。
You and I are about to enter into a very different future.
你跟我要进入一个非常不同的未来观。
When we look at the next slide,
当我们
we
看下一张
understand the
PPT 的时候，
problem.
我们就了解这个问题了。
In our pulpits, our pastors are continuously bombarding messages, continuously bringing message after message to address problems that we are facing today.
我们的牧者常常传给我们的信息是我们今天所遇到的问题等等此类，不断的说我们今天遇到什么样的问题。
And because of that nature of preaching, everything is focused on the here and now.
因为这是我们传讲的一个特色，所以我们永远专注在这里现在。
When was the last time you heard a message about the hereafter?
有什么时候你曾经听过一个，就是当耶稣再来，这个把我们提升上去之后呢？你多久没有听到这样的事了？
Now, it is strange that here and now, perhaps some of us get to live 70 years, some of us 80, some of us 90, maybe some of us 100. That's about it on this side.
那么在我们还活着，有人活70、80、90，顶多100岁，这就是我们现在所专注的。现在这里，但是也不够100岁啊。那之后呢？
A maximum of 100 years in the here and now.
最多100岁吧，在这里，在这个时空，在这块地域上。那然后呢？
But all eternity in the hereafter.
但是所有的永恒都是在这个之后啊。
And yet 80%, 90% of the time, sermons are based on the here and now, and very little, very, very little messages from the Bible about the hereafter.
所以我们听了很多的信息，都是现在这一生100年之中，或者在这里，可是很少很少信息讲到永恒，真正的永恒会怎么样？
The way the Bible intends for you and I to live is to read the book of Revelation all the way to chapter 22. Now that we have a clear vision, a clear view of what the future is going to be, then to come back to where we are today and to start reliving the life as if we are reliving that period.
所以圣经的目的是让我们读了启示录第1章第2到第22章，读完了以后，我们知道未来到底是怎么样，然后带着这样的态度跟了解，然后回到现在这个世界这个时空，然后把它活出来。
So beginning with the end in mind and working backwards.
所以你要把未来放在心里，然后倒回来把它活出来。
So with that, in the next slide, I have the title as Theology over the Long Haul.
下面一章我们有一个主题，就是在这个漫长的时间的岁月里面，这些思想神学的发展。
We have now on this side and hereafter on the other side.
那么我们一边是现在，一边是这个之后的人生之后。
With the return of Jesus dividing this timeline.
那么耶稣再回来，就把这个整个分成2个部分了。
So before the return of Jesus and after the return of Jesus.
所以一个是现在，就是耶稣再来之前，然后耶稣再来之后是另外一大部分。
We can call this side the end time plans of Jesus and the other side the eternal purposes of Jesus.
我们可以说这边耶稣再来之前是神的末世计划，但是耶稣回来之后是神永远的心意跟蓝图。
And we are between this.
所以我们就在这个耶稣回来之前跟耶稣回来之后的这个时空里面。
Like you, I also didn't know what the future will be until I read the book of Revelation.
我就像大家一样，其实我也不知道耶稣再来之后，这个这么大一部分到底怎么样，直到我读了启示录。
Now that I know, I'm reliving my life in view of the new reality that I've discovered through the book of Revelation.
所以我现在怎么样来生活？什么是我的态度呢？我是照着在启示录发现原来之后是怎么样这个态度来活现在的日子。
Now, in the next slide, I have listed 3 battles that we must face before the return of Jesus.
我列出了3个战役，我们必须面对，在耶稣再来之前。
This is before the return of Jesus.
这是耶稣再来之前，我们有3个战役。
There will be a battle against Mammon in Revelation 18.
第一个是启示录18章关于马门贪婪之神的战役。
Now, in case you are unfamiliar with the term Mammon, Mammon is a reference to the spirit or the god of greed.
如果你不了解马门的定义，这个就是一个贪婪的灵，这个就叫做马门。
I'm sure none of you have heard a sermon on that.
我相信没有人真正听过马门的灵，这个贪婪之灵的这种信息。
But this is a very real teaching that comes from Revelation 18.
但是这是启示录18章非常重要的一个教导之一，
where the angel calls out to God's people, come out of her, my people, come out of her, my people.
所以这边启示录在呼召说，从这个贪婪之灵出来，从马门的世界出来。
And then secondly, there's a battle for his bride in Revelation 19 verses 1 through 5.
在启示录19章1到5节有第2个战役，就是为他的心腹而战。
Only after this battle, the bride is finally ready for the wedding.
只有这个战役之后，这个心腹才真正预备好了，预备要参加神的婚宴。
As a member of the church, we are under the impression that the bride has been ready for a long time.
在我们在这个教会的教导里面，我们总有一个概念说，其实这个心腹已经预备好很久了。
But in Revelation 19, we read, the bride has finally made herself ready.
但是我们读了启示录才发现，到启示录19章，圣经才说心腹终于准备好了，意思是现在还没准备好。
Now, you and I have a part in that battle.
所以你跟我必须参与这个为心腹而战的这个战役。
Again, this is not a sermon that we hear regularly from the pulpits.
你看，这也是我们主日信息很少听到的一种信息。
The third battle that we must face before the coming of Jesus is the Battle of Armageddon.
第3个是阿米吉多顿大战。
Now, these are the 3 battles that must take place before the final return of Jesus.
这是耶稣最终再来之前必须要面对的3个战役。
And because we are here on this side of the return of Jesus, you and I must become acutely aware of the nature and the kind of battles that we are about to enter in.
因为我们是在这一边，在耶稣再来之前，所以我们必须非常清楚这3个战役的本质。
This is a battle that can only be undertaken by the ecclesia.
这3个战役只有天国议会 Ecclesia 才可以打这个战争。
And that's the reason why there seems to be a lot of awakening, a lot of callings right now as we are experiencing for the emergence of the ecclesia.
所以这就是为什么我们领受到很多的呼召被唤醒、被唤起，现在是 Ecclesia 的时候了。
So what happens after Jesus returns?
那么在耶稣回来之后，要发生什么事呢？
After he defeats the Antichrist, after he defeats the false prophet, after he binds Satan for 1,000 years, then what?
那我们知道，在耶稣再来以后，他捆绑了假先知，处理了敌基督，然后呢，这个又在这个千禧年之后，这个然后发生什么事？
99% of Christians alive today have no idea what's going to happen on the other side.
事实上，99%、98%的基督徒在这个之后要发生什么事，完全没有概念。
The real tragedy is you and I are going to be alive on the other side.
但是很大的悲哀是，如果我们不知道，我们就糟了，因为我们要活在另外一个这个之后的这个永恒里面。
You and I will be in our resurrected, transformed, glorified bodies, and we will be with Jesus on the other side.
我们要得到一个荣耀的身体，我们要在那一边跟耶稣在一起的。
The big question is, what will you and I be doing on the other side?
那问题是，我跟你在那边荣耀那一边要做什么？
Remember, the other side is forever.
你知道，另外一边是永恒，永远到永远。
So what will you and I be doing?
那你跟我到永远永远在做什么？
If we don't know what's going to happen on the other side, then we are going to live a life irresponsibly on this side, and we are going to pay a high price when we come to the other side.
如果我们对之后永恒的这个一点都没有概念，我们活在这一边，我们是不负责任，也是无知的。结果去到那一边，我们要付上很惨重的代价，因为我们完全没有准备。
I'll give you a clue.
我给你一点点的暗示。
How you're living your life right now will largely determine how Jesus will use you on the afterlife.
你如何用什么样的态度、什么样的这个方式，在这个世界活着，会很严重的影响你在那一个世界，耶稣怎么样使用你。
I will repeat that once more.
我要再讲一遍。
How you and I are living our life in this life right now will largely determine how Jesus will use you and I in the afterlife.
你跟我在这个有限的人生怎么样活着，会严重的影响你在那一个永恒里，耶稣怎么样使用你。
I'll just cite 3 things that Jesus will be doing on the other side.
我只要提出3个事情，耶稣会在那一边所做的。
According to Acts chapter 3 and verses 20 and 21,
我们根据使徒行传3章20到21节。
on the other side, Jesus comes to fulfill all the prophecies that has not yet been fulfilled. He brings it to pass on the other side.
在那一个永恒里面，耶稣要把现在还没有完成的应许全部都完成了。
So I want to cite 3 of his activities in his agenda on the other side.
所以我要说到一个项目，他要在那一边所成就的。
Number 1, to restore the damaged countries.
第一个是要恢复那些损伤的那些国家。
Have you ever heard of that before?
你听过这样的一个讲道跟信息吗？大概也是没有。
Why is Jesus interested in restoring damaged countries?
为什么耶稣有兴趣要恢复那些被破坏的国家呢？
Because he is coming back as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
因为他要做万王之王、万主之主啊，所以他要恢复那些被破坏的国家。
And the king's highest priority is the well-being of his people, his nations.
那么作为一个王，最重要是关顾他的国家、他的人民哦。
So this we find in Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 5.
我们看见以赛亚书2章2到5节提到这样的事。
We also find Jesus restoring damaged creation.
我们也看见耶稣要恢复这些被破坏的创造。
Now we sing about this and we share stories about this, but we have no idea when this will happen.
我们唱一些歌是关于这样的，我们也分享关于这样的事。可是我们对这个所谓恢复被破坏的创造，我们根本没有真正的概念。
I'm reading from Isaiah 11 and verse 6.
我们来读以赛亚书第11章1到9节。以赛亚书第11章1到9节。
And the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little boy will lead them. Also the cow and the bear will graze, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The nursing child will play by the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child will put his hands on the viper's den. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the sea.
我们读6到9节。豺狼必与绵羊同居，豹子与山羊同卧，少壮狮子与牛犊肥畜同 群，小孩要牵引他们。第7节，牛必与熊同吃，牛犊必小熊同卧，狮子必吃枣，与牛一样。第8节，吃奶的孩子必玩耍在鬼蛇的洞中，断奶的婴孩必按手在毒蛇的穴上。第9节，在我圣山的片处，这一切都不伤人不害物，因为认识耶和华的知识要充满遍地，好像水充满洋海一般。
Did you hear that?
你听到这一段信息吗？
That the nature of the animals that have been altered because of the fall and what happened after, they are being restored to their original order. They go back to the way they were in Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2.
你看到这些被创造的动物吗？因为罪的缘故，他们的本性都改变了。但是在这个之后，神要恢复他的创造，这些本性都恢复，照着创世纪1章、2章来活，这些动物都恢复了。
This is the agenda of Jesus.
这是耶稣要做的工作。
This is why he's coming back to earth.
这就是为什么耶稣要回到地上的原因。
To make all things right.
要把所有的事情都恢复对了，对的次序。
So he recreates nations.
所以他再次再造国家们。
He recreates all creation.
他再造恢复一切的创造。
And number 3, he restores damaged connections.
他有恢复被破坏的关系跟连结。
Let me read Isaiah chapter 2.
让我们来看看以赛亚书第2章。
I'm reading verse 4.
第4节。
Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 4.
以赛亚书第2章第4节。
And he will judge between the nations and will render decision for many people. And they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war.
第4节，他必在列国中施行审判，为许多国民断定是非。他们要将刀斩成犁头，把枪打成镰刀。这国不举刀攻举那国，他们也不再学习战事。
In the last several days, the big news on media has been what UK, US, and Australia is doing together.
过去几天，这个大新闻就是这个英国、美国跟澳洲，他们正一起在做些什么
？Together, they are creating a defense pact, and China is very upset about this.
他们3国呢也联手做一个防线，中国很生气。
This is a race for arms and nuclear technology.
这是一个核子武器还有国家这个国力的一个竞争。
Before the coming of Jesus, everyone is preparing for war.
你知道，你看耶稣再来之前，每一个国家都在为作战争做准备。
It's happening right before us.
这是在我们的眼前，就这样活生生的发生。
In a matter of days, Iran will be nuclear ready.
再过一些日子，伊朗就是有足够核武能力的国家了。
Why does Iran want nuclear power?
为什么伊朗要这个核子能力啊？
For the purposes of war.
也是为了战争的缘故。
You and I are living in a day and a time when war is on the escalation.
你会看见越来越我们活的日子，这个战争的这个紧迫性、急迫性、即将要来到性越来越明显。
There is so much stress in our world as nations are feeling anxious about what's going to happen when the big nations fight one another.
你会发现我们这个全地都充满了紧张的这个氛围，为什么呢？因为所有的国家都在看这些大国，如果他们打仗起来会怎么样。
But after Jesus returns,
但是在耶稣回来之后，
according to Isaiah chapter 2,
根据以赛亚书第2章，
there will be no more war.
再也不会有战争了。
Why?
为什么？
Because he restores damaged connections.
因为他要把这些被破坏的关系跟连结恢复起来。
The relationship between America and China right now is bad.
你知道现在美国跟中国、美中的关系是很差的。
Between America and Russia, it's bad.
美国跟俄罗斯中间的关系也很糟。
Between Australia and China, it's bad.
在澳大利亚跟中国的关系也不好。
But after Jesus returns,
但是在耶稣再回来之后，
the nations will listen to his counsel and advice.
列国就会在耶稣基督的这个断定中、劝勉中行走，
And they will destroy their weapons
这些战争用的武器通通被销毁，
as Jesus restores damaged relationships.
因为耶稣要恢复所有被破坏的关系。
This is Jesus's big agenda for coming back.
这是耶稣回来之后很重要要做的事情。
Many of us as Christians believe that Jesus is coming back just to take us up.
很多基督徒认为呢，耶稣再回来，其实唯一的目的就是把我们带回天家天上。
That's not what the book of Revelation says.
可是这却不是启示录告诉我们的。
He's not coming back the second time to take us up so that we can live with him forever.
其实圣经很重要的告诉我们，启示录耶稣第二次再来，不是把我们这个接回天上，然后就不管了，活在天上，不是这样子的。
He's coming back to earth to make all wrongs right.
他反而是回到地上，恢复一切错误被毁坏的一切。
Jesus' main mission is to turn this earth back to the way it was in Genesis 1 and chapter 2.
耶稣一个很大的任务，就是要把这个毁坏的世界能够恢复过来，变成创世纪第1章、第2章这样，原来是美好的世界。
The world that he created in Genesis 1 and 2 were a perfect world.
在创世纪1、2章，耶稣所创造的是完美的世界。
But after sin, Satan, and sickness came in Genesis chapter 3, the perfect world became an imperfect world.
在创世纪第3章，当罪来了，当撒旦来了，当疾病来了之后，这个完美的世界就成为了不完美的世界了。
So Jesus's main mission is to turn the imperfect world that we are living in today and make it perfect once again, like it was in Genesis 1 and 2.
所以耶稣主要的任务，当他再来以后，是把这些创造被毁坏的，再一次恢复到创世纪第1章、第2章一个完美的世界，一个完美的环境。
That is his main mission.
这是他主要的任务。
And he's inviting you and I to join him on this mission.
他邀请你跟我进入这个重建的这个任务当中。
Now, as we look at the next slide,
让我们来看下一章。
I want to focus just on one battle,
我要专注于一个征战，
the battle against Mammon.
就是马门之战。
So I've listed on my left the word Mammon, M-A-M-M-O-N,
你看到左边马门这个字母，
to give you a sense of what to expect.
那么马门之战是细节是什么呢？就是写下来这些细节。
M stands for the Messiah's mandate and mission.
那 M 代表弥赛亚的授权跟他的使命，
It's not what you and I think it is.
不是你跟我所想的那样。
A, after Armageddon, his
A,
agenda is about restoring all creation back to its original order.
在阿米吉多顿大战之后，他的任务是要恢复所有的创造到这个创世纪1章、2章一样。
For that reason, the letter M, he comes to rule for 1,000 years. We call that the millennial rule.
为了这个缘故，他回来统管1000年，所谓的千禧年。
So now listen carefully.
然后注意听，
Before Jesus can usher in his millennial rule, the reign of peace, what the Jews call the Messianic age.
那当他要带进这个千禧年之前，这个犹太人称为弥赛亚的这个世纪。
Before Jesus can restore the nations.
当耶稣要真正可以恢复列国之前，
Before Jesus can restore creation.
当耶稣可以恢复这个创造之前，
Before Jesus can restore relationships.
当耶稣可以恢复这些国家跟国家、个人跟个人的关系之前，
Between the nations.
在列国之间，
He must get somebody out of the scene.
他必须把一个灵处理掉。
That somebody is Mammon, the god of greed.
那么要处理什么？就是马门的灵，马门的灵必须要从这个 这个一切消失。
Mammon is a powerful spirit, a general operating under Satan.
你知道马门贪婪的灵很厉害，它是撒旦通常用来做的一个非常厉害的攻击的武器。
The name given to him in the book of Revelation is Babylon.
那在创世纪我们看到是巴比伦。
And John calls him in Revelation 18, this spirit of greed, as a whore, prostitute.
那你看到老约翰在这个启示录18章所说的这个是淫乱之灵，这个就是这个淫乱的女人，就是这个贪婪之灵。
Inviting the powerful people of the earth to do immoral things.
邀请世上有权有力的人做这些不道德的事情。
So this spirit, the God called Mammon, must be destroyed.
所以这个神称为贪婪之灵的，必须要被剪除。
And that's what we see in Revelation chapter 18.
这是我们从启示录18章所看见的。
Allow me to read Revelation 18 and you will know what I'm talking about.
让我来读启示录第18章，你就明白我所说的。
I'm reading Revelation chapter 18, verse 21 up to 24.
我们读这个启示录18章21到24节。
Okay, now listen. Then a strong angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer. And the sound of the harpists and the musicians and the flute players and the trumpeters will not be heard in you any longer, and no craftsman of any craft will be found in you any longer, and the sound of the mill will not be heard of you in any longer, and the light of a lamp will not shine in you any longer, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride will not be heard in you any longer, for your merchants will be great men of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints of all who have been slain on the earth.
我们读21到24节，有一位大力的天使举起一块石头，好像大磨石，扔在海里，说：巴比伦大城也必猛烈的这样被扔下去，绝不能再见了。22节，弹琴、作乐、吹笛、吹号的声音，在你中间绝不能再听见；各行手艺人在你中间绝不能再遇见；推磨的声音在你中间绝不再被听见。23节。灯光在你中间绝不再照耀，新郎新妇的声音在你中间绝不能再听见。你的客商原来是地上尊贵人，万国也被你的邪术迷惑了。24节，先知和圣徒，并地上一切被杀之人的血，都在这城里看见了。
Thank you, Vera. This is the part where Jesus, before his returns, Mammon is destroyed.
所以你看，这就是描写什么？在耶稣回来之前，这个马门的灵、贪婪的灵必须被处理。
The god of greed is destroyed.
贪婪之灵要被处理。
And then Jesus begins the process of restorations over all nations.
然后耶稣才能够带来这个列国里面的恢复。
And then the nations receive Jesus as their king, as Jesus become not only the king of Israel, but King of Kings and Lord of Lords of all nations.
然后列国就欢迎耶稣来，不仅是成为以色列犹太人的王，而是万王之主、万主之主、万国的王。
Now, in the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes that I have, I want to share a story with you.
那接下来15分钟，我要跟大家分享一个故事。
Like most of you, I was not prepared to face a future where Jesus will be executing things like this.
就像大多数人，在我读启示录之前，我并不知道未来耶稣要这样执行他的计划。
Only after reading the book of Revelation again and again, my eyes were open.
直到我一再读启示录的时候，我的眼睛开始被打开。
And like John, I was allowed to see the future.
就像老约翰一样，我终于可以慢慢看见未来了。
We are about to step into a future after Jesus returns, where greed will be no more.
我们将要进入一个当耶稣再来之后，贪婪之灵、贪婪将不再存在。
Today, you and I are living in a world filled with greed.
但是现在你跟我活在这个世界上，是充满了贪婪的。
Greed for glory, greed for power, greed for wealth.
贪婪不仅是为了财富，也为了权力；贪婪也为了名声。
And this greed is driving man to do crazy things.
这种贪婪、权力、欲望、经济可以让人做一些疯狂的事情。
It is this greed that is driving China to do things that China should not be doing.
也是这种贪婪的灵，要能力、要权柄、要经济力量，使中国做一些不应该做的这些疯狂之举。
Claiming this island in the South China Sea, claiming that island in the South China Sea, claiming that island in the South China Sea, saying all these are mine.
好像要得到这个南中国海，这个岛是我的，又说那个岛是我的，这个南中国海岛也是我，好像全部的岛屿都要被抓过来归他所有。
You take what is rightfully others.
其实是你偷窃抢了别人这个合法所应该拥有的。
That is what greed does.
这就是贪婪之灵。
That's what mammon does.
这就是马门之灵做的作为。
And China is not the only nation doing this.
可是中国不是唯一占有贪婪之灵的国家。
But after Jesus returns,
但是当耶稣回来之后，
the spirit of greed is no more.
这个贪婪之灵必须已经被处理掉。
China, from being a big bully, will become a big brother.
中国要成为一个欺负人的一个大哥，要成为真正的长兄。
That's the destiny of China.
中国的命定就是成为列国的祝福和长兄。
The devil wants China to be a big bully.
但是仇敌就让中国变成一个大哥，然后很残暴。
But Jesus wants China to be a big brother.
但是耶稣要中国成为一个爱人、帮助人的一个长兄。
As a big bully, the nations in South China Sea, they fear China.
你知道现在他是一个好像是一个大的这个大哥哥，很坏的强暴，整个南中海国海的都怕他。
But when China becomes a big brother,
但是中国有一天变成慈爱的长兄的时候，
the nations in the South China Sea will love China.
这些南中国的海的国家多么敬爱中国啊！
That's the goal of Jesus for China.
这是耶稣未来对中国的计划。
That's how we must pray for China.
这也就是我们如何应当为中国祷告，让他成为长兄。
Jesus did something in my life in the year 2014.
在2014年，耶稣在我生命中做了一件很重要的事情。
Ever since I said yes to Jesus after my encounter with him in Jerusalem, my future has not been my own.
自从1998年我在耶路撒冷跟他有个神圣的相遇之后，我跟他说 yes， 我愿意遵从的时候，我生命再也不是我自己掌管的了。
I completely surrendered my life to him
我完完全全的顺服他，
and asked him to lead me.
然后请求他完全的引导我。
Now that's a hard thing for a Singaporean to do.
你知道，对一个新加坡来说，是一个非常有主见的民族，是很困难的。
You know, part of the Singaporean DNA is that we plan everything.
那我们作为新加坡人呢，很会就是做任何的计划，就把计划做得
We
好好的。
plan our future.
我们也把我们的未来做计划做得好好的。
We even plan our funeral while we are alive.
我们甚至我们还活的时候，我们就好好计划我们的追思礼拜要怎么办。
That's our blood. It's in our blood to plan for everything.
你知道，这是我们的血脉里面，新加坡人就是把所有的事情都准备的好，计划的非常好。
Because Singaporeans don't like surprises.
然后新加坡人是不喜欢意外跟惊喜的，
Therefore, they make sure everything is planned.
所以我们要确保每一件事都在我的计划当中。
Now, COVID is shaking us up.
像这个疫情啊，这就使我们非常大震动，因为完全不在我们计划之内啊。
Every time we take one step forward, we end up taking 2 steps backward.
很令人挫折，好不容易防御做得好，往前进一步又退后2步。
COVID is really humbling us in Singapore.
你知道，其实这个疫情啊，真正让我们新加坡啊觉得谦卑。
Now, in 2014, I received an invitation from a Christian brother who lives in Brussels.
那我在2014年呢，这个受到一个邀请， 到 Brussels，我走是哪里？
Belgium.
那叫什么？标检那个比利时呀，比利时。
Yes. Now, Brussels is the capital of the European Union.
你知道比利时其实是这个欧洲联盟的这个首府啊。
That's where the leaders gather together and do their talks. Brussels.
那么就在这个比利时，他们常常聚在一起，然后一起讨论。
So he invited me to come over.
你想想看，我就到那里去，比利时。
And to be part of something that he was doing.
那么要参与在那里所做的一些事情。
And I asked him, so what exactly is going on?
所以我问神说，到底什么事情要发生？
This was in the month of April 2014, and he said, we are commemorating the San Remo resolution.
我说的是2014年的4月，我说你为什么要叫我去？他说我们要举行一个宪章的一个修改。
Now, for your information, San Remo is in Italy, and in 1920, something very significant, very historic happened there.
在1920，一个非常关键的事件发生了。
Now, before there was a United Nations was only born in 1947.
那你知道联合国只有在1974年才成立。
So before there was a United Nations, they had what they call a League of Nations.
你知道在1947年是一个联盟 Legion 一个联盟。
And in the year 1920, the League of Nations, the UN of before, came together and passed a resolution.
那么在这个联合国的前身，就是这个各国的联盟呢，他们就通过了一个法案。
That henceforth it will be entirely legal for the Jewish people in the diaspora to go home to their homeland, Israel.
说这个要让散居在各地的犹太人回到他们的本家是完全合法的。
So this very important resolution gave Israel the legal permission to enter into their homeland, Israel.
所以这个很重要通过的法案，让全球散居在各地犹太人有这个法律的根据，能够回到他的原初之地，现在我们叫以色列的地方。
So because it was associated with Israel, I said, okay, I will come.
所以这跟以色列有关系，所以我就愿意来参加这个聚会。
And there, my friend, his name was Thomas, he introduced me to a person that I've never met before.
那我的朋友汤马士呢，就介绍我认识一个人，这个人我从来不认得。
I don't know why he introduced, of all the people there in the gathering, he introduced me to this one man.
我不知道我的朋友汤马士为什么在那边聚集那么多人，他却介绍我给那一个人。
His name was Bruno Roche.
他的名字叫 Bruno Roche。
So we agreed to have breakfast together the next morning.
所以我们就决定明天早上我们在这个饭店一起吃饭。
Now, please remember, I've never met him before. He has never met me before.
请记得，我跟这个人 Bruno Roche， 我从来没有认识他，他也从来没有遇见过。
So we were having breakfast together.
所以我们就一起吃早饭。
And then a word came out of my mouth.
然后呢，有一个话就冲出我的嘴巴。
I said to him, Singapore is coming into her jubilee next year in 2015.
我就冲口而出说，2015年是我们新加坡的喜年。
Singapore was born in 65 plus 50 years, 2015.
那么新加坡独立是1965年，所以50年之后是2015年。
The moment that word jubilee came out of my mouth, he stopped eating and he started to cry.
当我讲到喜年这个字才讲出口，他就停止吃他的早餐，开始哭了。
He put his head down on the head and started to cry.
他就把头放在这个手上，就开始哭。
Now there are people in the restaurant.
你知道，在这个餐厅里还有别人，
And they are watching us.
别人就看着我们，为什么这个人要哭？
I don't know what they were thinking.
我不知道这些观看人在想什么。
Maybe they thought that I said something to hurt this brother and he started to cry.
也许别人会误会我说了一些话伤害这个弟兄，所以他开始哭了。
Then I reached out my hand and I placed on his right shoulder.
然后我就伸出我的手，拍拍我这个弟兄的肩膀。
My purpose was simply to console him, comfort him.
我的目的只不过是要安慰他而已。
But I don't know why he was crying.
但是我实在不知道他为什么要哭。
But when my arm, my right hand, came into contact with his shoulder,
当我的右手碰到他的肩膀的时候，
the anointing of the Lord fell on me.
神的恩膏就降在我的身上。
Right there in the breakfast room.
就在这个吃早餐的房间，
And I started to prophesy over him.
我就开始对他来预言宣告。
As I started to prophesy, slowly he began to get up.
当我不断的预言宣告的时候，他慢慢就抬起头来了。
I was surprised at the words coming out from my mouth.
我很惊讶，从我嘴巴里冲出来所讲的话，
I was saying things that I couldn't even understand.
我所说的话，我自己都不了解。
And then finally, he was up and he said, "How did you know? How did you know?"
最后他终于抬起头来，一直跟我说：“你怎么知道？你怎么知道这些
I know nothing.
我一点也不知道。
But you said it all.
他说：“可是你都已经讲出来啦。”
The essence of my prophecy was God has placed something very divine, very holy inside you. And it has been gestating and gestating and gestating. And the time has come for you to deliver that which God has planted in you. And it starts next year, I said.
然后我什么样对他宣告是什么呢？神其实放了一个很神圣、一个很属神神圣的一个计划在你的心里面，在你的里面，可是就不断的在孕育，但是时间到了，明年你要把它释放出来。
Now it was his turn to share his story.
然后他就开始慢慢跟我分享他的故事，
And here I was listening.
然后我就听他的故事。
He calls me Brother George.
他称呼我为 George 弟兄。
Brother George, I am Jewish.
他说：“George 弟兄，我是犹太人，
I am a French Jew.
我是一个法裔的犹太人，
My families are all believers.
我的家人都是一个信徒，
We are all spirit-filled.
我们都而且被圣灵充满。
And as a young boy, I wanted to serve the Lord.
其实我在很年轻的时候，一个小男孩的时候，我就想要来服侍主，
But my father had different plans for me.
但是我的父亲对我有一个不同的计划。
He wanted me to go to university and do my PhD.
我的爸爸想要我读大学，甚至读到博士学位，
PhD in economics.
读经济学的博士。
I had one habit, Brother George,
我有一个习惯，
to read the Bible every day.
每一天我都读圣经。
I love the Word of God,
我喜悦神的话，
especially the first 5 books of the Bible.
特别是妥拉前面圣经的5卷书。
And there was one book in the Bible that really took hold of me,
那有一卷书深深的抓住我
the book of Leviticus.
利未记深深的抓住我。
Now, you and I find the book of Leviticus very boring.
你跟我读那个利未记都觉得很无聊啊，很难读啊。
But that was his best book, his most favorite book.
但是他最喜欢读的书竟然是利未记，
Like Revelation is my favorite book.
就好像启示录是我最喜欢的书。
And as he began to read the book of Leviticus,
当他开始读这个利未记的时候，
God began to download revelation after revelation after revelation into his spirit.
神开始放一些启示在他的灵里面，不断的下载一些启示在他灵里面。当他读利未记的时候，
Finally, the day came when he had to present his dissertation, his doctoral dissertation, for him to qualify his PhD.
终于他要这个博士口试考的时候来了，他必须要这个经过这个口试，然后他才能够得到他的博士学位。
And the title of his dissertation was The Jubilee Economic Model.
那他的这个论文的这个主题就是喜年的经济模式。
When his professors received the dissertation,
当他的这个指导教授看到他这个论文的时候，
as they started reading it,
那他开始读的时候，
their mouth dropped wide open.
他的下巴都要掉下来。
They asked him, "Where did you get this information?"
他说：“你从哪里得到这些资讯的？
This information is so very good. I don't think anyone else in all the world knows what this is."
他说：“这些资讯多么宝贵，多么好！我相信全世界没有人知道这些资讯的。
Now, these are professors who don't believe in God,
你要知道，这些教授不相信神啊，
secular university.
是一个世俗的大学，
So they kept asking, "Where did you get this information from?"
所以他不断问他说：‘你这些资讯从哪里来的？这些你怎么得到的
And he said, in a very soft voice, "The Bible."
他就轻轻的讲：‘从圣经来的。
And they were shocked. "The Bible?
那这个教授很惊讶，
You
从
mean
圣
this
经来？
information in your document comes from the Bible?"
你是说你这个论文这些资讯从圣经来？
Yes.
是的，
Where in the Bible?
在圣经的哪里？教授问。
Book of Leviticus.
在利未记，
Where in the book of Leviticus?
在利未记的哪里？
Chapter 25 of Leviticus.
在利未记的25章。
And the professor said, "What you have here is pure gold."
他说：“你在这里就像一个纯粹的金子一样，你发现金块了，
You should publish this document.
你应该快出版你的论文。
Only don't call it the Jubilee economic model because people won't understand.
但是你可能要改一下题目，不要叫做喜年的经济模式，因为大部分人不懂这是什么意思。
Give it another name."
改一个题目，换一个比较通俗的名称。
So he gave it another name.
所以他果然换一个比较通俗的名称。
Now, this man uncovered the treasure that was hidden in Leviticus chapter 25 about Jesus's economic model.
其实这个人所得的资讯，就是他把这个耶稣放在利未记25章这个珍贵的经济模式给挖出来了。
The economic model that Jesus will introduce to the nations after he returns.
这个原来就是耶稣要再来之后，他要在列国所实行的经
And
济模
because
式。
it comes from Jesus, it is a perfect economic model
因为是从耶稣来的，所以是一个完美的经济计划。
that blesses everyone who's involved.
而且他因为这个模式要祝福每一个参与的人。
We live in a world today where profit goes one way.
你知道我们现在是要有经济利益都倒向一边，这个利益都是给大部分人占，少部分
Only to
人
the
占，
shareholders.
只有这个股份所持有人才有这个利益。
But Jesus's Jubilee economic model not only blesses the shareholders, but all the stakeholders.
但是耶稣的经济模式不但是祝福了股份持有人，也祝福所有参与在其中的人。
To cut the long story short,
长话短说，
he wrote a book called Completing Capitalism.
他写了一本书，叫做《完整的这个资本主义》，
And subtitle, Heal Business to Heal the World.
它的副标是医治这个商业，医治金融业，以至于可以医治世界。
This book has become a bestseller.
这本书成为一个这个排行榜上最畅销的书了。
If you ever read this book, you'll find my name mentioned in the book.
你如果读这本书，你就知道我想他有写序啊，就是有
Because
发现我的名字在从里。
He feels that the prophetic word released him to do this.
因为呢，是我给他的预言呢，释放他要写这本书。
Now, the real good part of the story is he was invited to China to share this economic model.
非常神奇的是，他是被邀请到中国来分享这个经济模式。
See the next slide.
下面一张，
This is Bruno Roche in China, November 2019.
这就是他这个布鲁诺·罗奇在2019年11月。
The people who attended this talk were from the highest level of the Chinese government.
那么参与这个会谈的是中国政府里面最高阶的官员。
And they were so impressed by what this man had to say. And they said, we need this book translated into Chinese.
所以这些高层很惊讶他所讲的，所以他就说我要把这本书呢翻译成中文。这高层告诉他说我要
See
把
the
它翻
next
成中文。
slide.
看看下一章，
That's the book in Mandarin, Chinese.
这就是后来这本书翻译成了中文。
The next slide also shows a young lady saying that.
那就是一个年轻人正在读这本书，
Healing business to heal the world.
来医治这个商业界，以至于可以医治世界。
God is using a Jewish man
神用了一个犹太人，
who has come to know Jesus as his Messiah
认识了耶稣基督是他的弥赛亚，
to bring a message to the world
去带给世界一个信息，
about Jesus' Jubilee economic model.
去显明了耶稣基督喜年的经济模式。
Today, he teaches a course in Oxford University.
如今他在牛津大学来教导这个课，
And heads of state, policymakers, economists from all over the world are coming to hear this message.
这些政治家、政客、经济学家，这些制定这些政策的人都来听他的课。
I've had the joy of joining him at different places in different times.
我有这样的荣幸，在不同的地区、不同的时刻来加入他这样的一个旅程。
I felt God had given me the calling to give him the covering and the push.
我觉得神给我这个呼召，成为他的遮盖，也推动他。
He is introducing to the world what we call today economic evangelism.
他介绍了世界经济福音，我们有所谓的经济福音方式。
I've just given you a taste of what is to come.
那我只是小小的跟你介绍未来所要来临的。
This is how big Jesus' vision is.
耶稣的意象是这么大，
And here we are with such a narrow vision.
但是我们现在所专注的是这么样的窄的目光，
It's about me, my church, and that's it.
只看到我的教会，就如此而已了。
And Jesus wants to bless all nations
但是耶稣却要祝福列国，
using his own word.
用他自己的话，
He wants to use his word to bless the nations.
他要用他自己的话来祝福列国。
The original revelation of Leviticus 25 was given to Israel.
这个最原初利未记25章的这个启示祝福是要祝福以色列的。
So once I brought Bruno Roche to Jerusalem, Israel,
所以我把这个布鲁诺的这个犹太人再带回耶路撒冷，
to do a conference with some government people.
所以跟这些以色列政府的官员做一些的会谈。
And then a man stood up. He was the president of the Ben Gurion University in Israel.
那有一在会谈里面有一个人站起来，他是板国鲁扬这国父这个大学的这个校长。
After having served as president of Ben Gurion University for many years, he was now a member of the Knesset.
那么在他服侍这个板国鲁扬大学很多年，校长退休以后，他现在是内阁官员。
And when he heard what Bruno Roche had to say,
当他听见了布鲁诺所说的话，
he said, "You have stolen our copyrights.
你偷了我们的版权呐、
This book belongs to us.
你知道这个照着利未记25章所写的，应该是属于我们的。
Leviticus belongs to us.
利未记属于我们犹太人的，
How come we never saw it? You see it."
为什么我们都看不出来，你却发现了？
And right there, Bruno Roche, in front of all these government people, said, "Because I have Jesus."
所以布鲁诺很大胆，在这些正统的犹太人面前说：“因为我有耶稣，所以我得到了这样启示。
And the whole place became silent. ”
然后全部这些人都安静。
When the meeting ended,
当这个聚会结束之后，
everybody left.
每一个人都离开了，
This man stayed back.
这个人还站在那边，还留着。
And when we were alone with him,
当我们单独跟这个官员在一起的时候，
he said, "I don't understand this.
他说：“我真的不知道这件事，
We are supposed to know.
我们应该知道这个经济模式才对。
We are the original covenant people.
我们是那个最原初的那个守约有约的民族啊！
But we are not able to see this.
可是我们却好像蒙了眼帕子一样，我们却看不见。
You, a foreigner, are able to see this.
你这是个外国人，你却可以看见。
And then he said, "Can you please pray for me?"
然后这个官员却对这个布鲁诺说：“你可以为我祷告吗？”
Now there were just 3 of us in the room.
你知道这个时候场内只有我3个人，我跟这个布鲁诺还有这个官员。
Bruno Roche, this man, and myself.
布鲁诺，我还有这个官员。
And then again, I felt laying my hand on the right shoulder of this man.
然后我就为这个官员按手，按在他的右边的肩膀。
And again, the anointing came.
再一次恩膏降下来。
And I began to read out his life story.
然后我就开始宣告出他的人生故事。
He started to weep and sob.
他就开始痛哭。
He says, "I don't understand. How could you know? How could you know?"
一样，他说：“我不能相信，你怎么知道？你怎么知道？”
So I said, "Jesus."
我说：“因为耶稣。”
He became very quiet.
他就非常安静。
I want to know more about this Jesus.
他就说：“我想要更多认识这位耶稣。”
Today, this man is this close to coming into the kingdom.
今天这个人，这个官员就差一点点要进入神的国。
He will face a lot of political pressure if he becomes a believer in Christ.
因为他成为一个Messianic Jew，就是信耶稣犹太人，他会有很多的政治压力。
But he's not giving up, and I'm not giving up, and we are not giving up.
但是他不放弃，我不放弃，我们都不放弃。
Bruno Roche and myself are constantly in touch with him.
我自己跟布鲁诺常常跟这个官员联络。
My latest was just yesterday.
那我才刚刚写给他这个信。
God is doing amazing things.
神真的做了很了不起的事情，很伟大的事情。
Jesus wants to heal the economic system of the world.
耶稣想要来医治这个世界的经济体系。
And it is through his Jubilee economic model, he wants you and I to evangelize the nations, economic evangelism.
所以神要透过他喜年的这个经济的模式，要用经济模式来这个传福音。
My time is up. Over to you, Pastor Daniel.
我的时间到了，交给
Thank you
陈
very
牧师。
much.